Hey everybody, it's Dr. Nicole. Welcome back to the channel. And I'm here with another reaction video. I think you all are really going to enjoy this breakdown because I'm going to go into the 6 habits that keep us as women in our masculine and not able to tap into our feminine and how that really impacts our relationships. And so there was this really great TikTok video. I'm going to play it for you. And she breaks down what happens when a woman or a relationship is in the depolarization stage. So we know we need the masculine and the feminine to balance out the relationship. But what happens when women, you are overly in your masculine and your man is in his feminine? Let's see what she has to say.
The roles have flipped. He's become over feminized and she's become over masculinized. And so, for the woman in this stage of the depolarization, she has physical symptoms of exhaustion. So exhausted because she's carrying tension in her body. She's not designed to make all the decisions. She's not designed to lead in the relationship. And what happens is she creates more testosterone in her body. So you'll notice women have neck problems, tension in their shoulders, and you'll hear them say things like, I just wish he would lead. I just wish he would take charge of the romance. I just wish I didn't have to make all the frigging decisions all the time. It's like so exhausting. They're very rarely interested in intimacy.
Okay. So that was really interesting, right? Because she said a couple of things. One is that when a woman is overly in her masculine, what's happening? She's not only having physical signs, but she is producing more testosterone. And we know that we need a little bit of testosterone, but if we are overloaded with it, it has a lot of implications for us as women. So, this is also a health issue. And it's also an issue of us being put in a position that we weren't designed to be in. And I always tell people, men and women are different. We're not designed to be miniature versions or different versions, but still a version of a man. And a man is not a version of a woman. Our the way our makeup is, our hormones, the way we function is completely different. And so when we are placed in that overly masculine role, or we take it on, it affects our body. It might be what we feel is burnout, but it certainly affects how we feel emotionally. It affects our body. It affects our connection to our partner. And so, if this is happening in your relationship, you really want to pay attention to it. And there's signs for the man where he's more withdrawn, he's pulling back, he's not leading, he's not, speaking up, he's shutting down, all of these things. So, I want to talk about 6 habits or 6 practices, behaviors that we are often engaged in as women that place us in our masculine, and they contribute to this depolarization, as she calls it, in our relationship where the energies are off balance. Now, I know there's a lot of debate about who's causing it, right? Well, is it the men aren't leading, so then we're taking, the women are then becoming more masculine, or is it the women are emasculating the men, right? It's not really about that. It's about if you notice that in your relationship, all right, it's like, are you going to argue about what came first, the chicken or the egg? Or are you going to address whatever the issue is? And so, if this is happening in your relationship, you really want to pay attention. It's almost like um, it's a canary in the coal mine about what could be down the road for your relationship because this isn't healthy. But it's also a sign, especially if you're feeling it in your body, of what could be down the road for you as far as your health. So, one key takeaway, ladies, being overly in your masculine can have you producing too much testosterone. It could have you operating out of sync with your biology and how your whole biocycle social makeup is. That's your biology, your psychology, how you socialize, your whole makeup. as a woman is being kind of drowned out because you're too much in your masculine. Okay. So I want to talk about 6 things that we may be doing as women that are creating this scenario or contributing to this scenario that she talked about. One is being overly critical. Being overly critical. This could be self judgment, it could come through overthinking. But when we are overly critical, that becomes a stressor. And that causes a physical response in our body as if we are fighting a stressor. When we're overly critical, we're judging ourselves, we're afraid of rejection. Then it spills over where we are judging and critical of our partner. Sometimes we become critical and it becomes a cycle because then we may be overly hypersensitive or thinking or feeling or experiencing that our partner is critical of us. And then it creates a scenario where then we're self-critical. We project that onto him. I think you get the point, right? So being very self-critical, self-judgmental, you want to be aware of that because remember, it's not just something that stays in your mind, but it creates stress that is felt also and experienced in your body. So you want to be able to learn how to do positive self-talk, learn to question any kind of judgments, negative judgments you make of yourself, negative self comparisons, and be aware of ways that you are overly harsh on the people in your life, including your partner and yourself. Okay. So being critical and negative self talk, self judgmental, those are very harmful habits. Okay. The second thing, or number two, is when we do not rest as women, we put on that superwoman cape. And here's the thing, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, or that you have to do it, or that anyone else expects you to do it. So that means learning to delegate, learning to kind of let things fall apart because when you become a superwoman, you are literally pushing your body and your brain and your mind to the limit. You are overly in your masculine. You are actually sometimes in survival mode because you're acting as if everything has to get done under this pressure. And it's, again, another stress that creates those stress hormones. It wears you out and it leaves you not feeling so good about yourself and not so feminine, right? Femininity is about, what do we say? We want to rest in our femininity. That's how we were designed to exist and walk through life as women. Okay. And so when you are in the superwoman syndrome, when you are not resting and when you are not, you're doing the most, you're putting yourself in that masculine mode. And that relates to number three, which is engaging in perfectionism, being a perfectionist, right? That goes with sort of nobody can do it as good as me. So you're judging other people and you're judging yourself. You're holding yourself to a standard where you have to do everything perfectly. That sometimes makes you feel you might procrastinate, which causes more stress. You might get paralyzed, what they call analysis paralysis, where you're overly like worried about whether or not if I do, you get stuck, you overthink, and you don't know which decision to make because it's too much, right? So that perfectionism is making it hard for you to delegate, but it's also making it hard for you to get things done, right? So you put on the superwoman cape, and then not only do you try to be a superwoman, you try to be a perfect superwoman. Again, that is another cause of stress. And think about your partner in all of this. If you're doing the most, when are you leaning back and allowing him to lead? If you are not delegating, when are you saying, "Hey, I trust somebody else outside of me?" There is nothing more in a healthy relationship that a man would want to do than to relieve the stress of his woman. Now, if you feel like, hey, well, not my guy, he's ready, he's willing to let me do it all, then that's a sign that things are out of balance. There's that depolarization, as she mentioned, in a relationship. But here's the thing, if you don't step back, then the cycle is going to continue. So learning to step back, taking off the superwoman cape, and putting down the perfectionism, knowing that mistakes are okay. No one is holding you to this perfect standard except yourself. And learning that it's okay to disappoint people sometimes. You're not, you're human. You're not an angel. You're not somebody who's always perfect, this infallible being, right? And so that leads to the fourth thing that we engage in as women that takes us out of our feminine, which is people pleasing. People pleasing, so many people engage in it. We take ownership of other people's reactions, their emotional feelings, how they're doing, right? We're doing a lot of emotional labor for other people. We're carrying the weight of their actions, their emotions, what they're doing. And a lot of that comes from a sense of like, we're not enough. So we have to prove our worth by pleasing everybody else. Right. And so you've seen a lot of my videos on boundaries. When we don't have boundaries, we people please, right? And so if you're being perfectionistic, you want to make sure no one else is disappointed, and you want to put this image of yourself like you're so good. You don't want other people to think badly of you. And so in order to rest in your feminine, you have to learn to be okay with disconnecting from other people being disappointed or other people wanting you to, you know, carry their weight and do their emotional labor for them. Okay. So being okay with disappointing people and knowing you don't have to people please. All right. And the fifth thing that we tend to do as women that will keep us more in our masculine is over communicating. And I know that might feel like, wait a minute, because you're always talking about how important it is to communicate. And you can look all over the internet, all over everywhere, YouTube, social media, there's going to be someone talking about communication, including me. But here's the thing, a lot of times for women, our communication, when we are feeling in a state of lack or not enough, it takes the form of over explaining and over communicating. It's again like we're trying to prove, or we want so hard to be heard, or we're fearing that we're not going to be seen or heard. And anytime we're in that fear state, or that not enough state, or that lack state, we tend to overdo it. We're over explaining, we're over communicating, and it takes the form of over talking. And remember, we talked before, a lot of times for men, a lot of verbalization, they, the men, there's been studies, they process verbal information more slowly. And so you can look at some of my other videos where I talk about ways in your relationship to give context to what you're saying and what you need from your partner. So you're not just using a lot of words, but then not really getting what you need out of the back and forth communication. So one thing to be mindful of is, are you over explaining? Are you trying to prove a point or prove, you know, that is this coming from not being feeling heard in other instances? And so the awareness is key, because the solution is not to keep over talking, over communicating, over explaining, because number one, that wears people down. Number two, you're probably blocking being able to truly communicate what you're trying to communicate. And number three, it reinforces that sense of like you have to be in that proving mode. Prove, prove, prove. And I've said it over and over. When you're in proving mode, you're in more of a masculine energy. So that's taking you out of your feminine. And the sixth thing, that was number five, the sixth thing that we tend to do as women that takes us out of our feminine is not being in tune with our bodies. Now, think everything that I just mentioned, I said it has a way that it is experienced as stress. It is experienced by the body and the mind and the brain as stress. So, if you're not in tune with your body, you get used to being exhausted, being mentally drained, feeling like you can't focus or be present, feeling things in your body, but you just, you ignore Things like hunger, like the need to pause, not just sleep. Some of us hit a wall mentally and we just keep pushing through. We don't think about taking time to rest, taking time to just sit with our feet up, taking time to go out into nature and reconnect, to the outside versus being just in our heads all the time. So when we are not in tune with our bodies, we tend to run our bodies into the ground. And again, that takes us out of our feminine. Okay. So if you recognize any of the signs of what she described as depolarization, your husband or mate taking on a more feminine role, being in the more, letting you lead, and you taking on a more masculine role, being in control, being upfront, never having that sense of emotional or even physical protection, then you want to look at these 6 things. Are you being overly critical? Are you not resting or putting on the superwoman cape? Are you engaging in perfectionism, trying to be perfect? Are you people pleasing? Are you over communicating? And are you out of touch with your body? Okay. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell so you don't miss a video. I post regularly and also go live at times. And make sure you share this and give a thumbs up if you have found this helpful. Take care.